In this short video, let's quickly gonna talk about static methods. Now, a good example to understand what a static method actually is the built-in array.from method. And let's just do that here in the console. So remember that we have the array.from method, which converts any array-like structure to a real array. So for example, document dot query selector. All right. So that's an error right there. And so you see, this now returns an array to us. And for some reason it is empty. Oh, and that's because query selector doesn't return a node list. So let's try query selector all. And so now indeed we get an array here. But that's not really the point. What's the point is that this from method here is really a method that is attached to the array constructor. So we could not use the from method on an array. So this is not going to work. All right. So from is not a function. And so that is because this from method here is really attached to the entire constructor, so the array constructor, and not to the prototype property of the constructor. All right? And so therefore, all the arrays do not inherit this method. Again, because it's not on their prototype. It's simply attached to the constructor itself. So array.from here is basically just a simple function, but it's a function that's attached to the array constructor. And the reason for that is simply so that developers know that it is related to arrays. We also say that the from method is in the array namespace. And we actually used that term before for some methods in the number and in the internationalization namespace. Remember, for example, number.parse float. So that's the same thing. Okay, so this method is another static method, and it's static on the number constructor. So it's not available on numbers, but only on this very constructor. All right, so these are some good examples that we understand what a static method is, and we usually use these kind of as helpers that should be related to a certain constructor. And so maybe you can imagine that it should be pretty easy to implement static methods or selves. And let's do that for both our constructor function and also for the class. So here I already have the constructor function that we wrote right in the beginning of the section. So this person here. And so to add a static method, all we have to do is write person. And let's say I want to create a very simple hey function. Okay, so which simply like waves when we call it. So let's just say console.log hey there, and then maybe some emoji so we can actually see it a bit better in the console. And so now, in order to call this, it is pretty easy. We just have to do person.hey, and that's it. So somewhere up here, we now should get this hey there. Great. But of course, this one is not inherited. So just like we cannot call the from method on an array, we cannot say jonas.hey, because it simply is not in the prototype of the Jonas object. So there's no way that the Jonas object could inherit it. All right. Now, let's just take a look at the this keyword here. But this again should be pretty obvious. And so that's essentially the entire constructor function here. And the reason for that is because that is exactly the object that is calling the method. And so, as always, that is basically the rule. So whatever object is calling the method will be the this keyword inside of that function. And so here, that this keyword is simply that entire constructor function. Great. And now let's quickly take this and do the same in the class, where it is even easier. So here, to create a static method, all we need to do is to add the static keyword. So static hey, and then that's it. So let's just write that here. So that is a static method, while these ones is what we call instance method. So as it says here, these are methods that will be added to the prototype property so that all instances can have access to them, and therefore the name instance methods. Okay? And so now we can simply, let's do it here at the end. We can simply do %cl dot hey. And so again, we get hey there, and this time this keyword points to the entire class. All right. So keep in mind that these static methods are not available on the instances, and sometimes they are still useful to implement some kind of helper function about a class or about a constructor function.